I wasn't even supposed to be home that day. My name's Elden. Yeah, like the old video game people keep talking about. I'm 42, live in northern Vermont, and honestly, I've never been the kind of man who makes noise. I stay quiet, I fix broken things, I walk the dogs, I pay the bills, and for 13 years, I've loved my wife, Corliss, with every corner of my heart, even the ones she never looked into. But that morning, something told me to leave work early. Call it intuition, call it fear, maybe both. I walked into our house around noon. No sound, no smell of her coffee or lavender hand cream, just a weird stillness that felt wrong. I called her name. No answer. I thought maybe she'd gone to the gym or run errands. I almost left, but then I saw it. The note on the counter. It wasn't addressed to me. It was scribbled carelessly in her fast, annoyed handwriting, and said, "He'll be here at 1. I'll leave the back door open." I don't know what cracked harder, my hands as they gripped the counter or my voice when I whispered, "No, please, no." I waited, not because I wanted to catch her, not because I had a plan, but because I couldn't breathe. And right on time, the back door creaked open. A man I didn't recognize walked in like he'd been here before. Tall, clean-cut, wearing that cologne I once bought for myself but never used because Corliss said it gave her headaches. They kissed in the hallway. I didn't move. Couldn't. I watched my wife, my best friend, run her fingers through another man's hair like she'd been saving her affection for someone else this whole time. She ignored every warning I ever gave. Every conversation where I told her I felt the distance growing. Every time I begged her not to keep secrets from me. She just kept saying I was paranoid, that I didn't understand how marriage evolves. I stayed until they disappeared into our bedroom, and I walked out of that house like a ghost. I drove around for 4 hours, crying, punching the steering wheel, listening to old voicemails from her like they belonged to someone who had died. When I got back, they were gone. The note was still there. The air still smelled like betrayal. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to scream or throw her clothes on the lawn. I was going to change everything. Not for revenge, but because I couldn't be Elden anymore, the man no one listened to. And this time, it would be her who never saw it coming. Corliss walked in like nothing had happened. She had this unbothered, breezy look about her. Hair tied up, phone in hand, humming some indie tune she probably played in the car. I was watching from my truck down the block, parked where the old tree covers half the windshield view. She didn't know I was there. She had no idea she just buried our marriage hours ago. And yet she smiled. She walked inside our home, our shared, memory-soaked home, with the same steps she took on the day we moved in. That killed me. The familiarity, the fact that she could betray everything and still move like it didn't cost her a thing. That walk broke me more than any screaming match ever could. But I wasn't going back in. Instead, I drove straight to my sister's place. She's the only person I've never lied to. When I arrived, I just stood there in the doorway like a wet paper bag of a man, and she took one look at me and said, "It's Corliss, isn't it?" I didn't even need to speak. I collapsed onto her couch, and she brought me a blanket, 2 beers, and silence. The kind that doesn't demand anything from you. The next day, I didn't go to work. I didn't call Corliss. I didn't even check my phone. I sat there thinking about every small moment that led to this. The way she started locking her phone, the new passwords, the gym leggings that weren't for the gym, the odd phone calls with Kay from accounting at 11 p.m. All the signs were there. And like a fool, I ignored every single one of them, trying to preserve whatever peace I thought we had left. I even remember warning her weeks before, as gently as I could, "Whatever you're doing, just stop before it gets too far. Please, we can fix this." She looked at me like I was insane. "Too far?" She laughed. "You watch too much TV, Elden. Not everything's about infidelity." That word, infidelity, I didn't even use it. She did. And now here I was at 2 p.m. on a Friday, sitting in my sister's living room while my wife was probably texting her affair partner. Maybe even planning another visit. Maybe even on the phone laughing about how paranoid I was. Maybe mocking how soft I'd gotten. I'd always been soft, emotional, talked too much about my feelings. wanted movie nights and long conversations. I thought that was love. I thought she saw that as strength. But to her, maybe it was weakness. That night, I made one final decision. I wasn't going to confront her like men do in movies. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to dismantle my presence in her life so quietly that by the time she noticed, I'd already be gone. And then she'd have to face something she never expected. A life without me holding everything together. Not to talk, not to argue, just to see it one last time while it was still ours. I pulled into the driveway quietly, like a guest. Like I didn't live there for 13 years. The porch light was still flickering, just like I kept saying I'd fix. And there were 2 mugs sitting on the front step. One of them was mine. That detail gutted me. She hadn't even moved it. Like I was still just around the corner, like I was still going to show up and act like everything was fine. I unlocked the door and stood in the hallway. The same hallway where I carried her across the threshold on our wedding night. The same place I once found her crying with a letter from her mom, and I held her for what felt like hours. I remember how small she looked then, how grateful she seemed that I was the one holding her. Now, everything just felt vacant, like I had died and no one told me. I started packing slowly, deliberately, only what was mine, only the things she never noticed. I took the books she never opened, the flannel shirts she said made me look too much like a dad, the hiking boots I wore alone because she wasn't into mud. I left her wedding album. I left the framed photo of us at Big S. I even left the ceramic turtle she bought on our 2nd anniversary, the one I used to rub for luck without her knowing. I didn't want to take memories. I just wanted to take me, whatever pieces of me were still untouched by her betrayal. Before I left, I wrote her a note. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I didn't even ask questions. I just wrote 3 short lines on the back of a receipt. You knew what I asked you. You knew what I saw. Now you'll know what it's like without me. Then I placed my wedding ring beside the note, dead center on the kitchen table, and walked out. No dramatic music, no rain, no shouting, just the sound of the door quietly clicking behind me for the last time. By the time she came home later that day, I was already gone. No trace, no tracking. I had transferred my money out of the joint account, locked myself out of all the shared passwords, erased my presence from our digital life, left no forwarding address. My phone was turned off and left on the counter. She had no idea how quickly she'd lose everything she'd taken for granted. I didn't need revenge. I needed freedom, and I was finally ready to live without the woman who couldn't be trusted with my heart. It didn't take long for her to realize. The first call came about 3 hours after I left. I know because I sat in the back of my truck, parked at a deserted rest stop, staring at the screen lighting up again and again with her name. Corliss, Corliss, Corliss. Each time it buzzed, my chest tightened, but I didn't answer. Couldn't. I wasn't strong enough to hear her voice yet. Not when part of me still wanted to believe she'd cry, apologize, beg for another chance. Instead, I watched the calls pile up until the battery drained and the screen went black. No voicemail, no text messages, just frantic calling. Like someone spinning the dial on a safe they forgot the combination to. I imagined her walking around the house, noticing the missing books, the shoes, the holes where my jacket used to hang. I pictured her picking up the ring and the note, confusion sliding into panic, panic sliding into dread. For the first time in years, she would have to sit with the consequences of her choices without me rushing to patch them up. I drove further north that evening, past towns so small they didn't even have a gas station open after dark. I ended up renting a tiny cabin near a lake no one had heard of, where the air smelled like pine needles and old smoke. The Wi-Fi barely worked. The heater rattled like it was coughing up ghosts. And for once, it felt good. Felt honest. The first night alone was brutal. I didn't sleep. I sat up until 3 a.m. replaying every memory I had of us. The good ones, the stupid ones, the ones that now felt poisoned. I remembered how she used to kiss my eyelids when I had migraines. How she used to leave handwritten notes in my lunchbox when I had rough weeks at work. How she used to say, "There's no one else in the world but you." All of it felt fake now, like some elaborate play she put on until she got bored of the role. And yet, part of me still wanted her to show up at that cabin, to find me. To say it was all a mistake, that she never touched him, that she missed me so much it hurt to breathe. But she didn't come. She just kept calling. And when calling didn't work, she started emailing. The subject lines grew more frantic by the day. Please, Elden. I made a mistake. Come home. Please just talk to me. I didn't open a single one, but I read the subject lines over and over until they blurred together, until I almost convinced myself I should reply. Almost. Instead, I stood out by the frozen lake that night, the cold burning my face, and let the silence wash over me. For once, there were no lies, no half-truths, no gaslighting. Just me, just the wind, just the aching reality that sometimes love doesn't die loudly with slammed doors and screaming matches. Sometimes it withers quietly, starved by betrayal and buried by the person you thought would protect it most. I didn't tell anyone where I was, not even my sister. I paid for everything in cash. I disconnected myself from every thread that could lead her to me. It wasn't about punishing Corliss. It was about protecting what little of myself was left. Every time I thought about her face, laughing in someone else's arms, whispering promises she once made to me, it felt like a part of my chest caved in a little more. Meanwhile, the emails kept coming. First daily, then hourly. Then, bizarrely, they slowed down, like she was either getting tired or realizing something she never considered before. That I might actually be serious this time. That I wasn't bluffing like all those arguments we used to have, where I threatened to sleep on the couch and never did. That I wasn't just bruised. I was broken. I thought about what it must have been like inside the house after I left. I imagined her walking into the bedroom, expecting a fight, and finding nothing but an empty closet. I imagined her trying to call my sister, my friends, and getting voicemail after voicemail. I imagined her rehearsing apologies in her head, the same way she used to rehearse fake sympathy when she forgot my birthday one year. I know how that sounds. Bitter, maybe even cruel. But when you love someone that deeply and they treat you like you're disposable, something changes inside you permanently. About 2 weeks into my exile, I finally opened one of her emails. It was short, no grand speeches, no dramatic. You were the love of my life declarations. Just 3 plain sentences. I miss you. Please come home. I didn't realize what I was doing until it was too late. There it was. An admission. Maybe not full, maybe not detailed, but enough. Enough to confirm that my gut had been right all along. Enough to pour salt on a wound that hadn't even begun to scab over. I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading it. I closed the laptop, stepped outside into the sharp air, and let the cold slice through the fog in my mind. I could have gone back. I could have said, "We all make mistakes." I could have slept beside her again, hoping every day that I didn't taste another man's cologne on her skin or hear his voice echoing in her laugh. But I would have been lying to myself, and I was so tired of lying. I wasn't strong. I wasn't brave. I was just done. I sat on the edge of the frozen dock that night, swinging my legs over the ice, watching the stars turn in slow spirals above me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone else to choose me. I was choosing myself quietly, painfully, but completely. And soon, Corliss would realize that some warnings come once. And when you ignore them, there's no second chance waiting behind the door. There's only silence. About 3 weeks after I disappeared, Corliss escalated. I didn't see it firsthand, of course. I heard about it through my sister, who finally managed to track me down after enough missed calls. I'll never forget the way her voice cracked when she said it over the phone. "She's losing her mind, Elden. She's driving all over town, leaving notes, showing up at work asking about you. She even asked the neighbors if they'd seen you." I sat there in the cabin, holding the receiver against my ear with trembling hands, staring at the worn floorboards like they held answers I couldn't find anywhere else. Part of me should have felt vindicated, maybe even a little powerful, seeing the tables turn, seeing her be the desperate one for once. But mostly I just felt empty. I didn't want her panicking because she lost her possession. I wanted her to realize she'd lost a person, a living, breathing man who had loved her with every flawed piece of himself, only to be tossed aside like an old pair of sneakers when the shine wore off. The next few days blurred together. Apparently, She even tried to file a missing persons report, but they laughed her out of the police station once they realized there was no foul play, just a husband who didn't want to be found. She texted my sister over 100 times in one weekend. She emailed relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. She even posted vague, heartbroken messages on Facebook, the kind designed to pull sympathy from friends who didn't know the real story. Sometimes you don't realize what you have until it's gone. Love is fragile. Hold it tight. Forgiveness is stronger than pride. Reading those made me sick to my stomach. Because when she had me, really had me, when I was standing right there in front of her, heart wide open, she didn't hold it tight. She didn't choose forgiveness. She chose excitement, secrets, thrill, lies. Now that she had nothing left to post about but regret, suddenly I mattered again. But it wasn't real. It wasn't remorse for the right reasons. It was regret for the wrong ones. The inconvenience, the shame, the sudden realization that she didn't look like the hero in her own story anymore. I spent long nights in that cabin thinking about what love really meant. Was it forgiveness? Was it giving endless second chances just because you once promised you would? Or was it finally, painfully, realizing that loving someone doesn't obligate you to keep handing them the knife they used to hurt you? I didn't hate Corliss. I hated what she made of us. I hated what I allowed her to make of me. A man so desperate to be loved that he ignored every red flag, every gut instinct, every whispered warning in the dark. The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope slipped under the cabin door. No return address, just my name in messy, familiar handwriting. Inside was a letter. Trembling fingers, shaky breath. I unfolded it carefully like it might crumble in my hands. The first line hit me harder than any slap ever could. I didn't deserve you. The letter wasn't long, but it was raw. The kind of raw that people only spill out when they have nothing left to protect. She wrote that she knew I knew about the affair the whole time, that she wasn't just flirting or harmlessly connecting like she used to claim. She confessed that it wasn't just a few moments of weakness. It was deliberate, planned. She said the man wasn't even special, that it wasn't love. It was boredom, thrill, the need to feel wanted in a way she thought I couldn't give her anymore. Reading her words was like watching my past self die on paper. She admitted she ignored my warnings because she thought I would never leave. She believed I would always be there, waiting, forgiving, patching up the damage. She confessed that the first time I begged her to talk to me, to be honest, she actually laughed about it later with her coworkers. Laughed at how sensitive I was, how needy I sounded. And now she said she couldn't breathe without me. That every corner of the house smelled like regret. That every time she climbed into bed alone, she thought about how easily she had traded loyalty for attention. That every time her phone buzzed now, it was just silence on the other end. Not excitement, not passion, just reminders of what she had lost. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "If there's any part of you that can forgive me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth it. If not, I understand. I'm the one who broke it. I'm the one who broke you." I folded the letter slowly and tucked it back into the envelope, without even realizing my hands were shaking. I stared at the cabin walls, the lonely little stove, the threadbare curtains, and I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't waiting for her to understand. I wasn't even waiting for the pain to stop. I had finally accepted that some damage can't be undone. Some things, once shattered, don't get stitched back together. They stay broken, and you learn how to live with the cracks. That night, I built a fire outside by the lake. I tossed the envelope into the flames and watched it curl and blacken, the smoke spiraling up into the frozen stars. It felt symbolic, somehow, burning the final piece of the life I had clung to like a fool for so long. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was just free. Corliss had made her choices. And now, finally, I was making mine. I walked back into the cabin, locked the door behind me, and closed my eyes against the heavy, aching quiet. Tomorrow I would start a new life, one without warnings, one without waiting, and for the first time in a long, long while it would be mine alone. The next morning came colder than any before. The lake outside the cabin was frozen solid. a perfect sheet of glass stretching all the way to the pines on the other side. I stood there on the porch with a cup of stale coffee, feeling the bite of the air against my skin. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel paralyzed. I didn't feel broken or waiting or small. I felt alive. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. I didn't suddenly become some self-help guru or a man dripping with swagger. I was still me, Elden, a little beaten up, still a bit of a mess, still soft around the edges. But now I understood something I hadn't before. It wasn't my softness that ruined things. It wasn't my loyalty, my emotion, my need for connection. Those were my strengths. They had always been my strengths. Corliss didn't leave because I was weak. She left because she didn't know how to handle a love that didn't ask her to perform, didn't force her to be anyone else. She mistook peace for boredom, stability for stagnation, real love for something disposable. That wasn't my failure. That was hers to carry. And now I didn't have to carry it anymore. I spent that day making plans, not for revenge, not to win anything, but to build a life that didn't revolve around convincing someone to stay. I called an old friend from college, a guy who ran a small repair business 2 towns over. I asked if he still needed help. Turns out he did. Turns out he didn't even ask questions when I said I needed a fresh start. Later that afternoon, I walked into the nearest town. 1 diner, 1 gas station, a library the size of a living room, and rented a tiny, ugly, but charming apartment over a hardware store. The landlord gave me the keys after a handshake and a 20-minute conversation about snow tires. No credit check, no references, just trust. Felt good to be trusted again. I bought new dishes at the second-hand store, a crooked coffee table, a worn leather couch that smelled faintly of cigars and history. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. It was mine. That evening, I sat by the window with a blanket over my shoulders, watching the sunset behind the trees, the sky bleeding gold and violet. For the first time in years, I didn't wonder where Corliss was. I didn't wonder if she was thinking about me. I didn't care. I thought about the man I used to be, the man who bent himself into shapes to keep someone who had already decided to leave. And I silently promised that man that I would never let it happen again. Corliss had ignored my warnings, and she faced her consequences. But me, I faced something better. I faced freedom. I faced healing. And maybe, just maybe, a future where love isn't something you have to beg for or fear losing every time you breathe the wrong way. Maybe a future where the right person doesn't just stay. They choose you again and again without needing a warning at all. And standing there in the cold, a little broken, but still standing, I smiled. Not for her. For me.